So there we go. All right, I'm gonna open it up. Did we just lose Joseph?
I think so.
Oh Lord. Mercury. I swear I didn't kick him out. No.
Yeah, I don't see him in the waiting room or in our participant list.
Strange. All right, well, we'll just let people in anyway. Is he there?
I see him. I'm letting him in.
Great. All right. That was so... Welcome back.
You're back. You're on mute, but you're back.
You're on mute, but that's okay. All right, I'm gonna let people in, and we'll see Sarah when she gets here. Hello, welcome everybody. Good to see you. Got a few minutes to hang out before we get started tonight. Thank you so much for being here. I would love, one of the things we'd love to do is to have folks just drop in the chat box where it is that you are zooming in from. Some familiar faces. We've got a couple of former Blue Hour features in the room, AKA celebrities. So pop in the chat box. Let us know where you are coming from Tucson. All right, exciting. I always have a little competition in my head about who's, coming from the furthest. Cincinnati, Ohio, awesome. Toronto, Canada. All right, we are already international. That's exciting. Massachusetts, and Chicago. We can't undercut our beloved city, Phoenix and Vermont. California, New Mexico, and Dallas. Oh, we're really all over the place. The cornfields of southern Indiana. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Normal, Illinois. Great, we get some, is Normal like central Illinois? It's not really southern. I mean, one of those Chicagoans who's like everything south of, the south side is Chicago. Or is southern Illinois.
Halfway between Chicago and St. Louis.
Got it. All right. So central-ish. Yeah.
Halfway between Champaign and Peoria.
Okay.
Approximately.
The heart of the state, right?
In theory.
In theory. Great. Awesome. Got some Boston coming in. Hello, hello. Well, we've got a few more minutes before we get started. Thank you so much for being here. We've got Seattle in the house. As you can tell, those who are just dialing in now, we're just dropping in the chat box a little note about where you are currently located. It's just fun to see where everybody's coming from. Virginia, thanks. Virginia is for lovers. This I've heard that's true. We've got 44 of us in the house. We got people from Wisconsin, Chicagoland, awesome. We're giving people a little extra time to dial in today partly because we had I think a record-setting number of people sign up for tonight's reading. We had, I think, 95 folks register. So very, very excited to see everybody coming in here tonight. And they are still rolling in. So those of you who are just joining us, feel free to drop in the chat box where you're coming from. And get a sense as to who we're talking to. Chris in California. Hey, Chris. It's always fun every month to see people come through. Like we've got, a growing set of folks who come through every month, and then a bunch of newcomers. So I'll talk more about this later, but starting this summer, probably July, we're going to move into a hybrid mode where we're going to have both live in-person readings and fingers crossed on all tech ends, but we'll be able to live stream at the same time. So that is a very exciting thing on the horizon. Oh, good, we've got New York in the house. Great. Wonderful. It's just another minute, and then we'll get started. Georgia, wonderful. All right. So just so everybody knows, we are recording tonight's session as we do each month, so that we can, we have someone dialing in from Africa. I just had to pause and note how intercontinental we have become. So we're recording tonight because that allows us to build out our digital archive. We do have that available on YouTube so that people can check this out for millennia to come, because the internet never goes away. Or just, next week, people can check it out if they need a poetry fix in between sessions. Okay, James says they're from Russia. Now we've had an Africa and a Russia, and I'm getting suspicious, but I'm gonna believe it. And I'm just gonna tell our funders that we have people coming from literally all over the world. Somebody needs to claim they're from New Zealand, and then we'll move on. Okay, so I think we should just go ahead and get started. I think we'll probably have some more folks roll in because we've still got some waiting room action happening. But I'm gonna go ahead and stop this music and stop my share and invite Helene to replace my rambling with things that make sense.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Blue Hour, presented by the Chicago Poetry Center in collaboration with Kundiman Midwest. My name is Helena Chanzar, and I'm the Director of Programs at the Chicago Poetry Center and the Midwest Regional Chair for Kundiman. At the Chicago Poetry Center, our mission is to connect people with poetry, to equitably engage poets with communities, and to foster creativity and literacy in schools. We do this with 3 programs. First, our education program brings poetry residencies, assemblies, and workshops to Chicago area schools. Second, our Critical Conversations at Work program engages adults with poetry through an anti-racism framework. Finally, our reading series connects poets with audiences all over the city and, as you all have shown us tonight, beyond. As I mentioned earlier, this event is co-sponsored by Kundiman, which is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to nurturing generations of writers and readers of Asian American literature. To extend Kundiman's vision of community building for Asian American writers everywhere, the organization has developed a national network of regional groups to host local events. Kundiman Midwest supports the live captioning of the Blue Hours readings. Finally, it is my pleasure to introduce your host, Marty McConnell. Marty is the author of When You Say You Can't Go Home Again, What They Mean Is You Were Never There, winner of the 2017 Michael Waters Poetry Prize. Her first full-length collection, Wine for a Shotgun, received the silver medal in the Independent Publishers Awards and was a finalist for both the Audre Lorde Award and a Lambda Literary Award. Yes Yes Books recently released her first nonfiction book, Gathering Voices, Creating a Community-Based Poetry Workshop. She is the co-creator and co-editor of Underbelly, a website focused on the art and magic of poetry revision. Everyone, please welcome Marty.
Hello, 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 hello. So good to see you all. Very, very excited for tonight's Blue Hour reading series featuring Sarah Gambito and Joseph Legaspi. A couple of quick other housekeeping items. These readings are offered absolutely free, but if you would like to support, I have put a link right there in the chat box where you can donate to the Chicago Poetry Center to support the great programs that Helene was just talking about. Two quick Poetry Center announcements. One, we have hiring calls out for 3 summer interns in communications, programs, and translation. These are stipended positions. So if you're interested or know anyone who might be, you can direct them right there to our website. The other thing that we wanted to mention is that we have next Wednesday, the 25th, our all schools reading, right? And so this is where students from all 50 some residencies that we have run for the past year all around Chicago will be coming together and reading their amazing poems. The link that I just dropped into the chat box is the link through which you'd be able to watch that live stream if you're interested. So those are our Poetry Center announcements. So we also just want to take a moment before we get into the reading tonight to pause to acknowledge a couple of things. I want to acknowledge the weight of this moment in our collective histories, to pause and send our energies and the hope for comfort and whatever safety can be found to those in Ukraine, to those in Buffalo mourning, to all those in mourning and struggle, to those fighting for the bodily autonomy of women and all birthing humans. So just to take a moment to let that be with us tonight, and also to dedicate the joy of our being together and the privilege of being able to gather in this way to that. We also want to take a moment to issue a land acknowledgement as we enter this virtual space together in community in hopes of individual and collective growth. We want to acknowledge that this event is being hosted on the unceded traditional homelands of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, the Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sauk, and Fox, also called this area home. This region's long been a center for Indigenous people to gather and trade and maintain kinship ties. And today, one of the largest urban American Indian communities in the US resides right here in Chicago, continuing to contribute to the vitality of the city, celebrate their heritage, practice traditions, and care for the land and waterways. We invite you to explore the unceded homelands on which you find yourself as well, as we take this moment to honor all who came before us, the Indigenous peoples displaced by colonization, as well as those who built this country through uncompensated and compulsory labor, those enslaved and those oppressed. We honor those who came before as we hold this shared space for art and expression. With that, I am very excited to introduce our first reader for tonight, Joseph Legaspi. Joseph is the author of the poetry collections Threshold and Imago, both from Carey Press, and 3 chapbooks, Postcards, Aviary, Bestiary, and Subways. A graduate of New York University's creative writing program, his works have appeared in Poetry, New England Review, Massachusetts Review, World Literature Today, and Best of the Net. He co-founded Kundiman, a national nonprofit organization dedicated to nurturing generations of writers and readers of Asian American literature. He's a recipient of a poetry fellowship from the New York Foundation for the Arts, and he lives with his husband in Queens, New York. I am so delighted to have you with us tonight, Joseph.
Hi, Marty. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the Chicago Poetry Center. Thank you to Helene also for putting this together, and everyone else involved there. Thank you for saying what you said, Marty, especially the it resonated with me that, this whole idea and actually gesture and action of honoring, that really hit hard for me. And so, I'm going to read this first poem actually in honor of course, with what's happening now with Roe. I mean, who knows what's going to happen after, right? So the first poem I'm going to read is Vows for a Gay Wedding. Not only because it's my husband's 10-year anniversary this year in September. So we actually literally got married months after the gay marriage became legal. And also I'm reading this poem because I'm reading with Sarah Gambito, one of my beloveds. And Sarah really was very crucial in finishing my book Threshold. She was one of my readers for this book. And initially the book ended with a poem about my mother. And Sarah, being Sarah's like, why are you giving your mother the last word? This is your book. You have to give the last word to you. So basically I'm dedicating this book to not only my husband, but also to Sarah Gambito, my other love. Vows for a Gay Wedding. What was unforeseen is now a bird orbiting this field. What wasn't a possibility is present in our arms. It shall be, and it begins with you. Our often misunderstood kind of love deems dangerous, how it frightens and confounds and enrages. How strange, unfamiliar. Our love carries all those and the contrary. It is most incandescent. So I vow to be brave, clear a path through jungles and shame and doubt and fear. I'm done with silence, I proclaim. It shall be, and it sings from within. Truly, we are enraptured with Whitman's urge and urgency. I vow to love in all seasons. When you're summer, I'm watermelon balled up in a sky blue bowl. When I'm autumn, your foliage ablaze in New England. When in winter, I am the tender scarf of warm mercies. When in spring, you are the burgeoning buds. I vow to love you in all places, high plains, prairies, hills, and lowlands. In our dream-laden bed, cradled in the nest of your neck, deep in the plum. It shall be, and it flows with you. We'll leap over the waters and barbaric rooftops. You embrace my resilient metropolis. I adore your nourishing wilderness. I vow to love you in primal ways. I vow to love you in infinite forms. In our separateness and composites, to dust and stars and the ever after. Intrepid traveler, lovers and family, we have arrived. Look, the bird has come home to roost. So, and actually that poem consists of like about 80% of my actual vows, which is, so it kind of wrote itself. So I kind of cheated on that poem, but I'm also really troubled by what's going on in my motherland, the Philippines. The election there. It's very disturbing and enraging and frightening for me. So it made me think of this poem actually from my first book, and it's actually a scene where my family departed, from Manila, into the States. So it's an immigration poem. Departure July 30, 1984. We were not prepared for it. America, the land cut like a massive slab of steak. Our mother did not sit us down to explain, and nothing was said over the black coffee and rice soup at mealtimes. My siblings and I approached our inevitable leaving with numb acceptance, as people do under martial law. Days prior to the date, things disappeared in the house. The display cabinet taken by an aunt, the wedding gift chinawares in it sold, except for the blue plates and swan-shaped bowls that would not survive the journey. The rice bin was given to a family friend, knives to Uncle Leo, school uniforms, cousins, roosters divided among the men, floral fabric for the women, dried mangoes and stale squid candies for the neighborhood children, a twin bed transported upstairs for my sister staying to complete college. That late July morning, the jeepney arrived as hired. The sun held dominion over the blinding sky. A zephyr funneled through the narrowing streets of Manila. The steady procession of well-wishers in our house did not halt. My father handing out pesos as if he was paying for a safe passage. Surrounded by luggage and boxes huge as baby elephants, we were each given $1 bill, our first, as the jeepney drove off to take us to the airport, leaving behind a throng of onlookers, waving violently, and a tearful older sister who years later would reenact this disappearing act, this fading scene of a rooster line road, of this cockfighting, banana tree lush town speeding away, lost in the kinetic gray cement and dark smoke of exhaust. So, and I'm gonna read this is like my last poem, and it's actually, I was asked to write a Zuihitsu for the Asian American Writers Workshops, the margins. And I was like, I don't write Zuihitsu. And so I was talking to the editor, Dana Isakawa, and what I realized was, this whole entire time during the pandemic, I was writing these fragments because, like everyone else, like we're so fragmented, right? So I can't really, quote unquote, complete a poem. And this Zuihitsu actually kind of gave all these fragments form. So Zuihitsu is a Japanese genre, and it literally means running brush. So basically, Kimiko Han actually wrote an entire book on the Zuihitsu, the narrow road to the interior. So basically, it tracks the mind of the poet, of the writer, and so it's actually a hybrid piece because it's kind of like filled with personal essays and prose poems and observations, and they seem to be disparate, but I think you can kind of see where the poet is going. So the brushstroke acts as if it's the mind of the poet, So this one is called Zuihitsu, Jackson Heights, Spring 2020. In mid-March, everyone went inward, rather retreated into themselves, into their versions of houses, high-rises, walk-ups, condos, basements, brick squares, partitions, wood, plasters, and speckled ceilings. Streets empty and skies emptier. A contagion was airborne. A cough could be a death knell of the constricted lungs, droplets of exhalation, mist or fountain, aerosol that lingered turned respiratory strangler. We were not the bunker type, my love and I. Our apartment storage enough for 2 middle-aged bodies. But we stuffed bundles of toilet paper in the upper reaches of our closets, walled up our kitchen cupboards with tin soldiers of canned organic soups, tomato paste, and beans. I asked, should we fill the bathtub with water? A window was no longer just a window. Trapped in the tower of my room, mornings and into the gloaming, I stared at solitude through the glass pane. Dash of sirens pierces, dissipates. A bombardment detonates, races to the pulses of the temples, resonates in the chest chambers, and darts down the nerves of the feet. I reminisce about the wet market I enjoyed so much going to with my mother in Manila. The bracelets of cut milkfish, pig's head mounted as masks, bananas suspended like open face fans, and all varieties of rice, milagrosa, risalina, dinurado, binulawan, dinalaga. While sheltering in place, the first 3 books I reread and read in order of consumption were Mrs. Dalloway, which catalogs the hours in a day of Clarissa, a most hospitable hostess. Severance, which I thought would be about corporate malaise. Station 11, which I read as guide and tarot. Couplets from a fragmented abandoned poem, Hiatus, scribbled in a new journal. No trips to Spain and Portugal. Mrs. Dalloway unable to fetch flowers. I used to hop on trains to work in an adjacent borough. I boarded jet planes to my dream countries. I sat at outdoor cafes sipping Prosecco, bubbling forth the frothy adolescence of me. Time was effervescent then. I didn't foresee it stilled. Then New York City explodes in cherry blossoms in April. A dream. A sparrow flies out through a hole in a shuttered window and carries the whole house with it like a winged chariot. Night, merciless accordion, flourishes in quarantine. Is the night the sparrow's dream? My mother said I was hatched from an egg. She was often prone to flights of fancy. But what if I cracked open as she pecked me to be, which rendered her aerial, nested high up Mount Ararat, eyeing the flood of the world. As the wine glass impulsively refills, my tongue pulsates like a river eel. Liquid from the vines collides with syrupy fluid from my mouth. They merge as Eucharist, because there was once a son, holy, who turned water into wine, prompting his humanly body to be leavened into bread, and we eat it, and we drink the wine of his blood. The ribbon eel spends its entire life burrowed in a coral reef. It is not a hermitage. Its head peeps, flared nostrils vibrating, open mouth breathing. Its movement orbits the perimeter of its garter of a body, pulled limbs drawn out by hunger. Within sea's vast acreage, home is an anchored empire. Outdoors is haven and fear. These days are of locked doors, mirrors, kitchen sinks stacked with rings of plates. Oh, my windowsill garden, bloom. Make me an Eden, tamed wilderness to be lost in, yet guarantees return into the hippo of my couch, the stork back of my office chair, the borealis glow of my laptop. I awaken to the heavenly scent of freshly baked bread. I am mouth and marionette, bounding out of the dumpling of my bed. The oven, an urban furnace warming up a spring morning with its whispering chill. Coffee, darkly roasted, tempered with sugar, milk. My husband now enters our birdhouse, carrying bundled twigs of forsythia, salvaged from the unkempt backyard. They radiate and rapture. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much. Everyone, if you want to unmute and, applaud raucously, make all kinds of noise for Joseph. Oh my God. Woo! You took my breath away. That was awesome. So great. So great. Now that we started with love and came all the way around to survival through the domestic. That was amazing. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. I'm so excited to bring to our Zoom stage Sarah Gambito. Sarah is the author of the poetry collection Loves You, Delivered, and Matadora. Her poems have appeared or are forthcoming in the Iowa Review, Poetry, Harvard Review, American Poetry Review, The New Republic, and other journals. She holds degrees from the University of Virginia and the Literary Arts Program at Brown University. Her honors include the Barnes & Noble Writers for Writers Award from Poets and Writers, the Wylook Award for Outstanding Service to the Arts from the Asian American Arts Alliance, and grants and fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, the New York Foundation for the Arts, and the MacDowell Colony. She is professor of English / director of creative writing at Fordham University and co-founder of Kundiman, a nonprofit organization serving writers and readers of Asian American literature, and Kindred, an accelerator for BIPOC artists. Sarah, thanks so much for being here.
It's really great to be here. I want to thank Helene and Marty and all of you for being here. And thank you again. I want to echo what Joseph said about speaking to our time, Marty. And it's easy to be so overwhelmed as we face the truth of our time right now. But this time with you, even suspended within a Zoom space, feels like a little bit of grace. To hear your poems, Joseph. I love to hear your poems, and to sit in this quiet space with you feels like a gift. So I thought I would begin with a poem by Adrienne Rich. It's called In Those Years. In those years, people will say, we lost track of the meaning of we, of you. We found ourselves reduced to I, and the whole thing became silly, ironic, terrible. We were trying to live a personal life, and yes, that was the only life we could bear witness to. But the great, dark birds of history screamed and plunged into our personal weather. They were headed somewhere else, but their beaks and pinions drove along the shore through the rags of fog where we stood, saying, I. So I'll read a couple poems. This is called I'm Not from the Philippines. Of course I am. Of course I am. Right? A white guy liked me, and it was like a lake might bend in half. I wanted to go to the Olive Garden. I really did when I was a teenager. I really wanted to. I mean, we couldn't afford to go, but so we would pass by, and I would always stare back and imagine when I could go to the Olive Garden. I said yes with my eyes like platelets. When God was Filipino, he put a pig and fire together and called it porkissimo. I grabbed a Filipino girl's hand and she said, are you a lesbian? I faked it to myself. I faked it to them all. All the nurses ever in the world are Filipino. Like a push in the gut, I rush past the hovels of hospital rooms, the great digital of machines and humans simmering at work, the pork chop of the leg poking from the blanket. There will always be sick people. You'll always have a job. Nurses with their soft white shoes, their cuneiform writing, the change purses of nurses divoting around, my aunts, mothers, uncles, cousins, whiplashing into nurses. I actually tried to become a nurse, and I wasn't good. I wasn't good at the science things. I couldn't do it. This is called Love Song. a young boy was shot to death. And so I wrote a poem and arranged it like salt around his vanished body. I said, you can't go past here. Wind was flying in our faces. I brought my friends with their leathery hands, their hands like pylons and bread baskets, and struggling rappers who sing baby, baby, baby. How does it balance on a crazy bird of paradise legs, the left hands of the clock, aligning around a number cut to burgundy serifs? How do we bear our own skin against ours? How we cooked for each other, told each other we were sick. We went to beaches and we were in pink bathing suits. Salty and fatty things were in the cooler, and the belly of the sky was managed with stars. So this is a Cento. I really loved the idea of this form. I didn't know, I mean, to find that it's like a found poem. Tour of Italy. Yes, that's what I want. I finally ended up at my first date was at the Olive Garden. This guy, Kevin, said, where do you want to go? I was like, the Olive Garden. Okay, since we're family, I'll tell you, right? I was so scared I wouldn't get to go back again to the Olive Garden that I can't believe it. I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu. The Tour of Italy, which basically was like little dim sum portions of everything they had. And it was so like rude to me, but I couldn't stop it. You know what I mean? Because I was really worried, like I wouldn't get to go back. Yes, Tour of Italy. So a Cento is a found poem. Here we go. My country untangles its horns and licks its own agave. We might meet at a table with fresh grapes, with the top of my head overflowing. We speak of quiet things, and these things quiet me all the long silver way. We walk in our own gardens, which could be a shared garden. To be in love and to accept so little of the world. I knew that someone might govern the mailroom moon. A teacher once told me to beware of the first person, the little girl voice. My hair would be sea green and I would write my myth in squid ink. It would be inscrutable and mine only, and therefore irrefutable. I drink cacao with my country. We are enterprising in our horsehair embroidered costumes. I said, what about the MacArthur Memorial in Virginia, the MacArthur Suite in Manila? She said this was under reconstruction. She was pissed at me for some reason. I made no effort to control my American accent. I knew that it would humiliate her, or perhaps that is my fantasy. The many legs, the fathom legs, my country in many countries, and my dialects and flower-flecked vocabularies named for a Spanish king who never visited. Did King Philip II of Spain visit the Philippines, the country conquered by his country and named after him during his lifetime? Answer, yes. And he said, this is a very good country for me to live at. Some tourists said they wanted to return to the Philippines to have a vacation again, while others wanted to live here. It depends if you like tropical places. Plus, there's a huge mall in the Philippines and lots of pretty beaches. I'll end with this poem. It's called Ancestor. The one woven in brass tapestry, heavy with rain, where weak neck babies cry from a sideways newspaper. Flashlight, when you shine through, the veins of our house fill with maples. I traveled with my small, cloudy hands. I drank wine out of plastic cups. You can't depend on the trapeze of your ears, the poor warthogs of your hands. You hold them ping-ponging in your hands in hands of everybody in different churches. How beautiful to be gusted in these different ways, glassine and shaking yourself with canine aplomb. He had the immigrant Captain Kirk way of speaking. I want you to be deeply heard, for you to take for granted that people will hear what you say, but for you not to be naive or surprised when people turn away. When I was brave, I pushed my feet into the petals, and these pushed me into the world I wanted to be in. I was high and above all the other birds. The birds flew in harlequins around me. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Folks want to unmute and applaud mightily for Sarah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. We've got a couple of minutes for a very quick Q&A. That was my daddy spoke with Captain Kirk. If folks want to drop anything in the chat box, if you have any questions, I'll give you just a moment to do so. Otherwise, I'm going to ask a question. So you've got just a second to come up with some exciting questions. And I'm going to keep an eye on the chat box. All right, I'm going to go ahead and ask you both a question. What was the name of the final poem you read, Sarah? That's not the question, but you can answer that one while I'm coming up with one. Ancestor. Got it. Awesome. I have so many questions, but I guess one thing that came up for me in hearing both of your sets was this thread around focusing on sort of what's in front of us as a means of survival. And I'm wondering if you feel like that is true more sort of what you've been like writing of late, this question of like, what's right here? And that's how we sort of like move through and get through, or if that feels like something that's kind of new-ish in your work. Or maybe it's just totally false and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. I
think I get a gist of what you're saying. You know, I mean, I feel like, I don't know, maybe I can even speak for Sarah just because we keep going back to the same subject nowadays. I mean, I've known Sarah for, oh my God, like close to 20 years, right? I felt like when we first met, we were like these young Filipino Americans trying to figure out our histories, personal and the bigger H of history, right? Mm-hmm. So I felt like even then, like my work, I think, and I think Sarah's first couple of books actually, you know, we're always kind of looking back, right? There's always kind of like this looking back into the past, trying to figure us out in a way that's rooted in the present, right? Like our present selves done. But nowadays, Sarah and I always talk about retirement. And I think how I envision that, how I interpret that is that we're futural, right? You know, and I think even what I'm writing now in terms of, let's say, the pandemic, which of course, like it's in everyone's head, everyone's mind, and everyone's like realities, right? It's so, in a way, here, right? It's like right in front of us. So in a way, what I'm trying to do, again, going into this like survival futural point of view, I want to go beyond that, right? But it's kind of tough, right? So I'm just working through it. So I don't know if that's kind of what you're indicating, you know. So that's the way I think my POV has been in terms of my poems lately. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have to look back so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that question. I think that, Joseph, I love that Zuihitsu poem so much because of the catalog as a genre, like listing out, oh my God. How we try to survive through this unprecedented time. We're still in pandemic, right? So I think I just, to be honest, like I haven't been able to write during pandemic. Like it's been very difficult. But recently, like I started to write again. And I realized something. It's like you have to be so radically vulnerable to write a poem. Like you really do. Like to write a poem, to read a poem and receive a poem, to really receive a poem. Like we all know those moments, right? When you really receive a poem, like it strikes you down, like you can't breathe, right? And I think that I just, you know, I don't know, when you're learning, I don't know, when you're just trying, you don't know what's going to happen. I just have a new refreshed respect for what a poem is and what it can do. So yeah, what's before you, and to allow yourself to be open to it, like extremely difficult, extremely brave, but this is how we can really arrive together towards perhaps a new space.
Thanks, Sarah. I love that. I feel like that's a great sort of thought to end on, you know, our working together towards a new and better shared space for all of us. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Echoing Beth, sorry for the Zoom bomb, for anybody who caught that excitement. We got it out quickly, but it does happen occasionally. Thank you so much, Joseph and Sarah, for being here. Those of you who are joining us for the workshop, I look forward to seeing you in about 15 minutes over in there. Please stay tuned for...
I do not appreciate what you did to my friend.
Great. Cool. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
We're gonna duck on out. Have a wonderful, wonderful night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much, Sarah and Joseph.
Just moving everybody to the waiting room so I can be like, what? We were so close.
I know. And we removed like 2 dudes, so Helene and I were chatting. We were just leaving you out of it so you didn't have to focus on that. But yeah, I mean, as soon as that person was like, I'm from Africa, I was like, okay, all right. You were from Africa, you would know what country you were from. Oh yeah, you're on mute.
Did something appear on screen?
Yes, a guy was masturbating on screen. Yeah.
Oh, I did not get that at all.
He stayed muted because like, so I think like people are playing with like, if you unmute versus you do your screen, like it bumps you up to different degrees for different, you know.
He was like right in the middle of my screen. So I was like, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Did you and I both remove him?
Geez. Yeah, I had it on like speaker, so I didn't even see. Oh, geez.
Yeah, I have been like a little bit hawkishly on gallery view in these since the Zoom bomb happened, to like, I am just constantly looking to be like, who's suspicious? Are they about to unmute? We had one that was like a totally innocent unmute. It was Allie Friel, who's in the waiting room, who like, I saw Allie had a kid on their lap, you know, in frame. And then later, like the kid seems to have like unmuted the computer and talked for a second, got them muted real fast. But yeah, I with these other guys, I mean, we did get them both really fast. And we also removed 2 people before they did anything because it was just like so suspicious.
Right. Totally fair.
They do seem to come in packs. So I feel like that's useful for like, you know, I mean, like they just had like super racist names and like, yeah, just some creating my own mental checklist of what to look out for with shitheads.
Yeah, geez. Oh, well, I'm relieved that I didn't see it, but also thank you for taking care of it.
Yeah, just a whole lot of penis on the screen for like 10 seconds.
Poor Sarah's in the middle of Sarah's beautiful like response. She's like, oh, I'm like, what?
Yeah, I saw Sarah react to something and I was like, I don't know what she's reacting to. Sheesh. All right, well.
And I feel like there's something, I mean, I guess maybe it just makes sense, right? But like the more the larger group we have, the more likely it is to like, I don't know, to happen, like, I don't know if Zoom bombers are looking for a larger room because then it's easier to kind of like slide in. Like if it's 6 people, then, it's going to be easier to like spot and kick them out, but, oh, we're still recording.